Thank you, Creative Mornings, for inviting me. When they came to me to speak about color, I was a little shaken because although color is our business, we don't speak about it very formally. It's always informally in classrooms or in the canteen or just outside when you go out shopping. So when you really want to speak about color, I had to get back to my textbooks and also start looking at things about color. So all the information you hear today is research in the past 10 days. And the first thing that occurred to me about color is my own gurus. I think some of the best colorists in India today, Nilima Sheikh and Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh. They used to speak to me about color. And the best memory I have about color is this paint box my parents gifted to me and told me that I only have to use it on Saturdays and Sundays. But it was not, and obviously I defied them. And I'll move ahead with a small introduction about color. And before that, I just want you to close your eyes for a fraction of a second and imagine there is no color in this world. Thank you. So these are the definitions about color. Welcome to the world of color. Color is mystery. It's a wavelength of life for some, reflection, it's a signal, it's perception, it's also a sign, or it's just a way of life for many of us Indians. Artists have used color since time immemorial, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to convey exactly how they feel, or to reproduce the environment and the ambience at the time when the painting or an image or a Rangoli was done. Color is being used as a powerful tool in art, and artists have used it to create light, space, shadow, and even symbolic associations. Being a painter, when we talk about paintings, the foremost thing that comes to mind is color. One cannot do without the other. Although color has different connotations, the primary significance is that color is tied very deeply to human emotions and behavior. Color influences us physically, emotionally, and even spiritually in a way that no other medium can. India has always been exalted and remembered fondly as a country of symbolic colors. To an outsider, its colorful culture, streets, and stories seem like a page out of an ancient folk tale. But color, in essence, has been a large part of Indian consciousness. Symbolic color of India, from the deep orange marigold flowers that bejeweled almost every celebration, the deep hues of red that deck up the bride on her most important day. Color in India has over time become synonymous with religion, an expression of faith and beliefs. It is color of the fertile day that reaps harvests and better lives, and it's used widely in prayer ceremonies and offerings. And India could hardly be celebrated as a land of spices without its most feasty ingredients, the red chili. And while red symbolizes fertility and purity, it also connotates a certain sensuousness and demands positive energy. Home to myriad colors because of this obvious diversity in its population, India is home to many interpretations and representations of symbols and colors. Colors represent different emotions to people living in different regional, geographical, and religious divides. And perhaps certain colors that have a special place in particular areas may not necessarily enjoy a similar status elsewhere. Some of the universally celebrated colors find their origins in the spices that are used widely across geographical and religious divides. Turmeric, for instance, while being used for cooking in both north and south, is also used in ceremonies, offering prayers, and marriages. Yellow symbolizes sanctity and is an essential herbal ingredient applied on the body and face of women in the subcontinent. In a country steeped in religious beliefs, the origin of most colors lies in the power and the mythical lives of its gods. So let's take it further. A graphic representation of color and our country. Here are colors associated with the chakras, and those of you who are into yoga will know that we don't think about it as color, but each of the chakras is associated to a particular color. This is this amazing slide I found. I don't know from where it is, but it's just a riot of colors. Holi. And you can't think about anything else other than Holi, which is a celebration of color. And it's also a time where the god of love, Kama, is evoked. And it's a time where a lot of courtship happens. Although we don't have much evidence of a lot of images and historical records of Holi which was actually played, it was like a courtship dance that was played. And the men used to go around looking for the women. The women were also, it was a time when they were looking for their life partners. It was a time when love was celebrated. Green, a color which is also associated with Islam, is also the color of nature. We can't think about color without thinking about Rajasthan and the kind of colors the women wear there. I'll just come to colors which are very, very used spiritually or symbolically, like the color blue. Like here you have these blue elephants. So the idea and the imagination of the artist is very important here. So here it's a mythical bird that is grabbing all these elephants. So you could just imagine that the enormity of the bird and the elephants. So the artist who's a miniature painter has this range of colors that he is able to draw upon, and most of the time it's symbolic color. It's not color that is naturalistic or from reality. Kali, although it's considered black, it's not black, it's bluish black, and generally she's sticking her tongue out. Here is a very famous image from Basoli, and the yellow is very, very interesting here. It's just like a flat bed. So when you look at a miniature painting, you need to look at it as something that is not trying to look at perspective. It's just in planes. Foreground, which is the jamkhana which you're sitting on, middle ground and background. So you look at them in planes. And in these planes, the artist is trying to play with color, pattern, etc. And there's a lot of stories about the color yellow. I'll come to it when I show you yellow. This is a fragment of a miniature painting. It is pre-Mughal. These two paintings are pre-Mughal. When the Mughals come in, they bring a different range of Persian colors and they mingle with the Indian tradition and create new colors and hues. Here colors are used in its starkest way, solid color. And this is a painting from Balagopala Stuti, and it celebrates the birth of Krishna. Delightful painting from the company school. Here is the painter trying to look at the master. So he wants to incorporate him into his own life. So he tries to put this kind of saffron jacket on him. It looks incongruous, but that's the way the artist accommodates the other. Srinathji, and all of you know about the symbolism of Krishna. He's supposed to be as blue as the night. But Srinathji tradition has a great tradition of celebration of color. I've not been to the Srinathji temple, but there's something called darshan. So all of you know what darshan is. As many of you know, that darshan is something which you associate with looking at the divine in a very short period of time. So you can't hang around there. So in the celebration of Krishna, there is a particular thing called Gulabi Rangrez. The word Gulabi Rangrez itself talks about the ritual. Everything which is made on that particular day is made up of roses, the color of rose, Gulabi. So even the dress for Krishna is made up of pink. Although pink has other connotations in fashion and contemporary life, for India, pink is very auspicious. And as somebody also said, Diana Vreeland, who was the editor of Vogue in the 70s, I think she said, pink is the navy blue of India. So she was trying to say that when you come to India, you see pink is the royal color of India. And we'll tell you stories about pink and its association with Jaipur, which is also called the Pink City. Just surpassing and moving to the south, you can't talk about color without talking about Kathakali and Kerala for that matter. And you also know how the Keralites dress. They don't use a lot of color. It's an offsetting of the kind of the color of the monsoon, the paddy fields, etc. They are basically in white and gold or silver. So this is the kind of aesthetics that is embedded in our culture. So when it comes to characters and the classical dances, you know that it is a riot of colors, and this character is called Pache, which is basically green, but he represents Krishna. And the association of Kathakali and the idea of the Navarasas, you also have something called Navrang, 9 colors. So the Navarasa and Navrang are connected to each other. It's the northern part of Kerala, Kannur. It's called Thayyam. Here the man is dressed up as Bhagavati. And the color which is used is this, bright red. And sometimes he sticks out his tongue, which is gold, and he comes to each home. It's not a dance. It's not done on stage. It's a ritual thing where it is part of the community. So the community has to call Bhagavati to their home and ask for wishes and ask her to grant things for them. The Bhagavati also becomes a soothsayer. So it all depends upon who invites Bhagavati home, and sometimes they have conversations with Bhagavati. So this whole idea of how it is imagined with color, also sound for that matter. Going back to the northeast, and you see how color is represented there in the fabrics. It is the most famous painting, very popular. It's called Bani Tani, and it's how features of a woman are exaggerated. And it's kind of ideal of beauty in the Kishangarh school of painting. So the idea of fisheye, you don't see anybody like this in everyday life. But it's different kind of aspects of beauty put together. Spaces and how they evoke different emotions. And as architects, you realize that color and light play a very significant part in creating spaces. And the red ochre color, which cannot be, I think, manufactured, but it has to be from ingredients which are natural, red earth, geru. So color to welcome you inside, color that is part of the threshold, color that celebrates maybe Lakshmi and Vishnu here and the whole pantheon of gods. So color in the threshold becomes very important. It's also done in the south with rangolis and patterns and torana, etc. We are in dangerous territory now, saffron, which has been, I think, hijacked by the mainstream right-wing organization. But saffron is a color of renunciation. It's a color that is associated with the sacredness of our culture. And it's also called with many names. One of the names is Kavi. So the color Kavi is actually, again, the color of Geru. And there are many variations of saffron. You all have to realize that when we speak about color, it's always been very interesting to see the colors which were available earlier are not the same colors that we see today because of the chemical colors that come into the market. So the color yellow has a very interesting story. If you Google search about the color yellow, it was I believe used from cow's urine. So the idea was that the cow was fed with green mango leaves and the urine used to get very yellow. And this yellow urine used to be burnt, and this yellow pigment used to be created for colors. But the yellow color which you get now is totally different, and it doesn't come from cow's urine, but it's manufactured in Camlin or Reeves Company or Rembrandt Company. But it's still called Indian yellow, because of this long history and tradition, etc. And another color which is closely associated with the color yellow is red, kumkum. There are different varieties of kumkum and its association with marriage and religious ceremonies, etc. Here is someone who's become very, very famous, but his inspiration has been the color in India and also the kind of archetypal forms. Anish Kapoor. He's one of the most famous Indian artists. I can't call him Indian because he's very cosmopolitan and lives in London now. And he's an international artist, to be precise. And Anish uses colors extensively. So color plays a very, very important role for somebody like Anish. And when you look at the way Anish uses color and pigment, for that matter, it's very fascinating because it directly refers to what you see in city market or in the bazaars of India. But what is more important is the concept and idea in which Anish tries to make this color so prominent and so interesting. He's playing with this idea of archetypal forms. So as you can see in the next slide, the title of this is Mother. So this whole idea of the womb, it's also the representation of the cosmos. And when you go closer, you realize what happens when you go closer to something like this. You start whispering and you want the sound to echo. So this is how he plays with environment and color. And this is the color which is so much associated with his idea of India. So here the color comes from, which is the small state that a small district that is associated with this color blue. And why? The god of evil. Yeah, that I know.
Because they want god of evil.
No, it was actually a caste thing. The Brahmins first painted their houses blue to kind of make their houses more prominent. But some brave Dalit started painting his house blue too. So it all got mixed up. So we don't know who this brave Dalit or the guy who doesn't belong to the Brahmin community is. It's become a norm. So you see Jodhpur in this blue colors, many kind of blue colors. And the word for blue is Neel. So the Neel which they use is ultramarine. This is how it looks like. The same colors inspired an artist, and this is part of a large mural that covered the walls of this gallery 2 months ago. It's another work of black, but again used very interestingly as a black hole by Anish Kapoor. Again, black is supposed to be no color. It's also a color that is associated with nazar and drishti. So when a new child is born, there's a black dot so that the evil eye reflects your gaze or your nazar towards the child. So there's no hole or there is no kind of depression inside. There's just a black paint applied to the large block. So you imagine that there is a black hole, a rectangle that pulls you inside. So this is what color does to you. It creates illusions. Story of indigo. Associated with history, associated with our country. Indigo is a plant product. It's grown extensively now. The next slide. And indigo fabrics are more expensive than the others. But now you have a color substitute. So indigo is, your jeans also has some indigo, supposedly has to have some indigo color in it. And it's sought after everywhere. So here's a Japanese designer who has made something out of indigo color. What is this? It's closest to indigo, but it's more precious. Lapis lazuli. Next slide. It is dug out from the mountains of Afghanistan. Rocks are powdered. This pigment is supposed to mix most expensive pigment. So if you go to Ajanta, and you all should go to Ajanta if you really love color and Indian art, that you have some portions of the murals there painted with lapis lazuli. And there's another story of the paintings and the mural traditions of Ajanta which we'll come to later. But lapis lazuli is very expensive and it cannot be afforded by many unless there is a royal patronage to it. So it was widely used in Mughal painting. All of you know this. And Bangalore is famous for its chow chow bath. So although the kesari that you see here is not used in kesari bath, but kesari bath means the color kesari, which is saffron, which I believe is also something which is grown and used a lot in Spanish food. So it's interesting how we look at saffron and how the fashion market looks at saffron, much to the amusement or the displeasure of the right-wing party in India today. And this is not a painting done by an Indian, but the way it is done is obviously like a miniature painting by Japanese artists, which I saw on the net. It's really, it evokes this idea of India with this turmeric kind of yellow and the obvious exotic thing, which is the elephant and the howdah. So you could buy these prints online. So I was quite surprised that there's a market that is available for these kind of prints. So the turbans, they are these different turbans from Rajasthan, which have different colors. Bandhani especially, and the more the colors, the more expensive the turban, because the number of dips keeps increasing. And here the Rabari tribe are the most, I think, interesting and good looking people that I've ever seen in India. I think they could walk any ramp in Paris, and these men wear such kind of jewelry. And the next slide will show you, sorry, this is turmeric. Another story which I need to tell you is that although associated with food, we have a lot of color stories about turmeric and how it is used as an antiseptic. The food also is like a color palette at times. And playing with the color palette has been a part of our tradition, and it also, the texture of the food becomes very important. The crispiness of the papad or the squashy palya or something else. So, or the kind of sambar which is made. So it's just a palette of colors which you don't think about. And we take it for granted at times, but the word Chitranna, which has other associations, it's supposed to be Chittarada Anna. All the colors are supposed to be in it. Yellow, the karben soppu is green, the peanuts are red, and there's so many other things, the green chilies, etc. So the idea of something that is so common but it is celebrated is so interesting. Green seen in two different places. One because of enamel color, the other one celebrating Kanjivaram. There is no other way or the best way color is celebrated in Indian textiles, especially in Kanjivarams, because you get the oddest kind of combinations. And who decides these combinations are these weavers. And they have a color palette which is inherent and it's from generations and is passed on from one community to another. And they also have these names in Tamil which they associate with birds and animals. So they never say green, they will say Kili Pache or parrot green. So, and they say Navil Kalt blue, which means the peacock neck blue. So, what?
Draupadi Manjal.
Okay, so there you go. The Draupadi Manjal. And so this amazing associations immediately. So there's nothing is taken by itself, nothing is taken from a box. It also has some mythical associations, religious associations, spiritual associations, etc. And you can make those associations. You can create some other association you want. Like how in the in St. Mary's festival, you have a light colored kind of kavi. You know, it's almost pinkish orange. And you see Mother Mary wearing a blue kanjivaram in Bangalore. You know, like it's so how we appropriate things and make it our own, that it's so fascinating about color. Although it's very symbolic and rigid at times, you never get married in a black sari. So only a very like high profile person could wear a black kanjivaram and get away with it. But going for a wedding with the black kanjivaram, it's not done. Here are these amazing paintings done in the 5th century, still alive, thanks to the Japanese technology that you have them restore. So these colors are a long story, but to cut it short, they were made by artisans, collective group of artisans. So the painters community got together, there was a master artist and there were people around him. You used to help him make the colors. So there's a whole team that could make colors. So it has to be ground, it has to be mixed with other pigments, it has to be kept ready. So the cartoon is drawn first on the wall, the outline cartoon, and then colors are mixed accordingly. There are different kind of fresco methods which I won't go into detail. Next. Closer home, Lepakshi. The kind of earth colors that what you see, but look at the variety of patterns that are here, which are the inspiration for the Kalamkari fabrics. From classical we go to the folk. The folk imagination of the folk artist is a different idea of color. It's totally different from the idea of the classical arts in India. So a Gond painter, somebody who was very famous, Jangad Singh Sham from Bhopal, has painted this work. Even they have started using oil paint and acrylic colors. So look up Jangad Singh Sham. Unfortunately, the Japanese took him to Japan to do a large museum, and he committed suicide there. So Jangad is somebody who is well known for these amazing kind of canvases. This is also Jangad Singh Sham. Most extraordinary kind of detailing that Jangad did. If you ever go to Bhopal, the Bharat Bhavan has a large collection of Jangad Singh Sham's work. The person responsible for him is a very great painter called J. Swaminathan. Swaminathan was responsible to bring folk and folk art into the realm of the contemporary. So he used to make M.F. Hussain, Tayyab Mehta sit with Jangad Singh Sham, the same platform, or on the floor for the matter. Color is part of everyday reality in everyday life. So if you go to the heartland of Rajasthan, you will see that color part of architecture, decoration, and the symbolism is to create this kind of idea of Vasant or springtime. You've seen many of these paintings sold in all the bazaars here, but this is, I can call her the grand master of Mithila painting, Ganga Devi. She is the top of the lot. And the idea is these kind of lotus sunbursts that are there like a rangoli, and all the auspicious things that are needed for procreation, for the suhag raat of the bride. So the fish, the parrot, and the lotus are the symbols that are associated with procreation. This is again Jangad Singh Sham's kind of work, but totally different kind of palette. As you see, acrylic colors have become part of their reality. I have to have this, not because I'm from South India, because there's nothing more amazing than looking at a Gopuram in Tamil Nadu. I think it's the most exhilarating thing one could see, and the kind of color that they've used, the color of the land, and how it goes into a gradation. And I think you strain your neck looking up at the Gopuram. Deeper down in South Canara, there is a tradition called Naga Mandala. And Naga Mandala is a very, very ritualistic art form where Rangoli pattern of a Naga is painted, and this is done for the well-being of the community, and it is also sponsored by the community for a particular occasion. And this is a Naga Mandala done at this time, and you could see the colors. They are not colors from the market. They are colors which have symbolic value. It is green, pache, haldi, kumkum, and the white. So they are closer to tradition in these small pockets in South Canara. This is also part of the Naga Mandala tradition. There's a lot of authenticity about using color, because color is basically pigment, but at the same time one has to change. So you change into buying a Rangoli powder which is available in the market. So the Rangoli powder is basically made up of chemical colors which are mixed with chalk or other kind of powders, powder base. So when something is very authentic, they cannot use chemical colors, because we need to realize that colors have a process. What you see in the Bata red, which is so much associated with our way of shopping, is not the same red that you see in a kumkum, because the material is different. And all the tiles which you see from the Mughal period, which are gone, colors which have gone through fire, have a different kind of a glow and sheen. So these colors are called faience in Parsi, and these are the colors which are used in Persian painting or in Mughal painting for that matter. So that's how you differentiate between the Indian miniature paintings, the Pahadi paintings, and the later Mughal paintings through the kind of color palette. This is another mandala, the Tibetan community in Bailkuppe, which is very well known. Here again, for the mandala, they use sand with color. But they say that each color has a specific vibration. So, and they have to use this particular mandala to evoke the gods. And where you are sitting down, we had five Tibetan monks doing the mandala, which you might have seen in the video. And the last day, without any emotion, they just take a broom and sweep all this away. So this, which is a symbolism of beauty and life being impermanent, and all this colored powder becomes grey, and they take it and throw it into flowing waters. So the color association, very, very important. Another thing which is so very stark is the rangoli which you see, but you could also see the kind of geru kind of color, the red earth color here. It's not only the pattern, the kind of pigment and the cow dung preparation that is done on the floor. Look at this amazing Warli painting done by a master artist, Jivya Soma Mashe, who lives in Warli outside of Mumbai. He's somebody who is considered a world master. So a very great artist called Richard Long collaborates with Jivya Soma Mashe. And these are two fishnets. And look at the kind of imagination that this man is able to evoke with just the color of white and the kind of pattern. These are mandalas. And they are very specific mandalas. So each mandala is associated with a goddess. So the triangular in the center is a representation of the mother goddess. So you also have the outer mandala, you have the lotus medallion, and you have the procreative triangle in the center. Here is an artist called Raza, who is very, very well known, who is inspired by these mandalas and also uses the kind of elemental forms and colors which you see in Indian art. And he's one of the most well-known progressive artists in our country, still alive, and he also has set up something called the Raza Foundation to support artists. Raza's constantly worked with the permutations and combinations of color and primordial forms. Triangle, circle, square. Nothing beyond it. So he calls that like Ankuran. Bija and Ankuran. The black dot is the Bija. And this is Ankuran as in the growth, growing up. The downward triangles are supposed to be Shakti. The upward triangles are supposed to be Shiva. It's like the yin yang, which is also seen in the mandalas. Here is an artist, maybe many of you know him, Krishnamachari Bose, the curator of the Kochi Biennale. His idea of color is extremely contemporary. It is totally opposite to what Raza Saab is trying to do. He calls these paintings stretch bodies. So it looks like color seen through reflection. The reflection of chromium or something that is an object, etc. And here the color is stretched. It almost looks like something that is being formed, molded, etc. and some kind of color codes that work around it. I cannot end without remembering C.V. Raman and color and his whole conception of the Raman effect, of how light is made up of different colors and how light can scatter color. Although I end my presentation with this particular slide, and Raman's association with Bangalore is somebody who also got the Nobel Prize for this. We keep the session open for discussions about what we saw and some things that we've not seen. When we think about this kind of color which is very culturally specific, we also realize there are a lot of confusions with this idea of color codes. So, for that matter, even in our own countries, because of its vastness, there are certain communities that only use white as mourning. But in certain communities, the brides use white dipped in a tinge of turmeric for their weddings. And there are these color codes, and talking about color internationally, let's open up this color code to explain it. They are color forecasters. It's big money. So you need to forecast the colors for the next season so that all the fabrics, the mills, the dyes directly depend on this forecasting. So if you forecast the right color, you're into big money. Because in this particular season, whether it's fall or winter, if you do not choose the right color and make it the color of that particular season, nobody's going to buy your clothes. So color forecasting is one. There is a lot of stories about how color is, even for that matter, similar but not the same. And orange means different to different people. I showed you a slide. So for orange has become a very kind of fashionable color these days. Tangerine, yeah. It's associated with certain names. One is that although India has this rich variety of color, it can become a cliche. Because you see that the opposite of it is also true. If you see, go to the Sabarmati Gandhi ashram, it's all in white. You see the Jain monks, they are in white or with no clothes at all. Total minimalism. One side you have total excess, the other side you have less is more, minimal, total minimal. I forgot to mention the word color, rang, comes from the word rag. So rang means to color the mind, then to influence you in that way. So I'll tell you in my own perception, when I went for a fellowship, my friend told me, don't dress up like an Indian, he said. So I said, okay. Then I had to wear black, black and black. When I went to this opening, everybody was in black. There was not a single person wearing anything else. So for them, and for artists, black is, that very nice color. You're supposed to look thin, even though you're fat. And it's a color that is a non-color for many of us. But when you go there, it's everybody wearing different shades of grey and black. And it's the most depressing thing to see when you're abroad, that there is no color palette over there. So the mindsets are very, very different. We celebrate color, we enjoy color, we make color a part of life. And incidentally, this whole business of pink and blue is just made up by the advertising industry. So they could sell the same product. The same shampoo in the pink bottle and the blue bottle is the same. But it's just made that it's for boys and this is for girls. So just by color, you're increasing the market. Back to history, we also realized that when the British dignitaries came to Jaipur, the king also thought that he'll match the city accordingly. So it's also pink because of Hawa Mahal is pink. It's got this pink sandstone. So all the other buildings were painted in a kind of pale pink. So it became the pink city. So it's kind of color coding that happens. But here pink in the Rajasthani and the North Indian thing is a color that is for weddings. It's also called mithai pink, right? So mithai is associated with flavor, auspiciousness, celebration, etc. But in the Western context, pink could be feminine. There's also something called the pink ribbon, the pink triangle. So different associations in different contexts, which will connect to the way we look at pink. And in the South Indian temples or in sacred spaces, this white and red stripe, which you see everywhere, also separates the sacred from the profane and the secular outside. So a very smart friend of mine didn't want people to pee on his wall, so he painted them with these stripes in Chennai. So it suddenly became sacred. He did not want to put Rama, Krishna, Allah, and Jesus. So he just painted them. Just so imagine the kind of psychological association we have with color. And especially traffic signals, red. See, in India, it's more about the intensity of color. But for a Scandinavian country, it's about using it in a pastel shade. So when you're mixing color, you need to mix white into them. So you tone down the intensity into a hue. You make it into a hue. So they don't relate to the kind of, that's why they say that don't dress up like an Indian, but these colors have become universal now. So these colors are again coded in fashion, also coded in furniture, etc. But this is a color palette which the people are used to, a culture is particularly used to. So there are times when I think there is, if you go to Pondicherry, where my friend Lata is from, there is a kind of color code. All the ashram buildings are a certain color, which is grey, silver grey. And the other part, which is not the French side, is a riot of other Tamil colors. So there is this clash of the so-called French and the ashram, which
White town and
yeah. So it's a matter of technique. The Italian fresco, what Michelangelo used, was a wet process. So the color had to be mixed with the plaster when it was applied. Here it's supposed to be the dry process. So a layered background is made and color is kind of layered on it. So it's not as strong as the Italian frescoes. But there have been a lot of different discoveries made where the same kind of fresco, like the Jaipur fresco, is very different. So there are many varieties of fresco paintings that are available in India. One is a layer on layer, the other one is infused with the background layer. The third one is that you grind the color into the wet cement also. So if you know this Attangudi tiles, cement is mixed with color and it's made into patterns so that the Chettinad homes have this beautiful tiles. And it's because of oxide color. If you go into the sitting room, you have it's not Jaisalmer stone, it's a 10-year-old staircase, yellow staircase made up of yellow oxide. Fluorescent, again, it's a color that has to do with light, radium, again, it's material. And all these, the color range is increased tremendously because of technology. So you have more range of colors that are available to you on your screen. But if you try to imitate the same color onto your paper, what you see is not what you get. I'm really impressed by this turnout on a Sunday morning. Really shocked and surprised because Bangalore has this reputation that nobody wakes up before 11. And when the organizers said that there's going to be a house full, I never believed them. Thank you so much.